Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
I want to welcome you to a webinar that is being presented by MTM Services on medical leadership and the role that medical leaders play, especially in the CCBHC world that we're all moving into. The presentation is really going to be about how to become a better leader as a medical professional, and to help teams that are trying to figure out how to implement CCBHC and the role of the medical director. First couple of slides are really all about MTM. If you've not heard of us, this is our lovely team that is able to help you as you are making the transformational changes that you need to in your organization. So today I am really going to talk about leadership competency, especially as it relates to a medical director. The learning objectives are really to understand why we have to focus on developing and maintaining our multidisciplinary approaches in order for us to be successful, in order for us to achieve the outcomes that we want for our clients and that they're coming to us to achieve. Identifying and addressing the silos that exist within our systems of care, and trying to understand a little bit about the barriers that seem to maintain them, even as we are working to make changes. And ultimately, how to potentially start to redesign our systems so that we can create the successful teams that we need moving forward. And ultimately, what is the role of medical leadership in making that happen? So I think a very important place to start is the realization that community mental health centers, regardless of how our healthcare system, we may be standalone, we may be affiliated with an FQHC or a hospital system, but we are healthcare systems. And that is based on the understanding that mental health and substance use disorders are chronic diseases of the brain. We know that they interact with other medical conditions, often make those worse, and vice versa. And we know that in order to meet the needs of the clients that we are serving, we need multiple individuals with different skill sets and competencies to have the positive outcomes that we're looking for. On top of that, our current environment is one of perpetual change. And one of the biggest changes that we are facing is how value-based payment systems or prospective payment systems are going to impact how we deliver care. There are some good things that may come as a result of that, and some that are maybe problematic. But it's all about a shared risk perspective, meaning that we as providers are going to be accountable for the financial success of our organization. As a result, that means that we have to become more effective, more efficient, and the quality of the care that we're providing has to be borne out in objective data. We also know that we are responsible for the sustainability of that system. So I'm bringing these points to the forefront because medical providers in CMHCs have often not really thought about these things. We know about the chronic disease of the brain, but understanding how funders are impacting the way that we deliver care, and that we need to adopt our processes to accommodate that, as well as be advocates to hopefully make some changes in how it is being played out as well. We are the safety net. We are the safety net for the individuals with these kinds of conditions. And as a result, we need to be internally working collaboratively We need to make sure that we are co-occurring competent, that we are trauma informed, that we have good care coordination. And as I've already said, our systems need to be de-siloed. Most of those things are things that we as that medical providers really need to be on top of, and we need to know how to interact with our peers within the organization around all of those issues. We need to have a voice in how we're going to create multidisciplinary care pathways, about how we are going to implement episodic care and appropriate level of care placement based on the client's current needs and objectives. And we need to make sure that how medical services are functioning align with how clinical services are functioning and align with how operations are functioning. We need to become a valued team member as well as a strong voice for how we should become integrated within ourselves and within the community. It often falls on the medical director to be responsible for some critical community partnerships, especially when it comes to primary care and specialty medical care, and then working with stakeholders to address some of those social drivers, those determinants of health that our clients tend to have a lot of. So it's realizing that if we're going to manage the whole health care needs of the clients we serve, we need to be integrating within our own programming, but also within our community. Because some of the best solutions are going to come from us learning how other organizations work and then aligning ourselves with that so that we can do the best things possible for the clients we serve. So every organization has its mission statement, its set of values, and many things about how they approach the work that they do. But when you come right down to it, it is three basic things. We are here to meet the needs of the individuals we serve, and CBHCs through our missions are very much driven by that. And that is a part of what engages our staff. They want to make a difference. We want to make a difference. So number one, we want to meet the needs of the individual served. We want to create a workplace where employees feel that value and where they can do their jobs well. We all know that workforce issues are a major problem within our industry at this time. It is a top priority for every CCBHC to figure out how do we retain our good staff, how do we train our staff who need additional support to become proficient at what they do, and how do we recruit new individuals to fill spots, because every CCBHC right now has openings regardless of the division you work in, whether you are direct line staff, whether you are in the operations. We know that that is a problem. We know that individuals tend to leave their boss and not the mission. So chances are, if they leave your organization, they're looking for another place where they'd be able to do the exact things that you're trying to do, meet the needs of the individuals that are served. I think the other point is we do have to realistically look at how we fund and are able to pay our workers. And as a medical director with the department that generally has the highest paid individuals, that has special meaning. Number one, we need to make sure that we are efficient and managing our resources well so that we are meeting the needs of clients and we are maximizing the revenue that we can bring so that the entire system can stay sustainable, which is the last thing that every organization is looking to. We want to maintain our financial sustainability so that we can keep the doors open. It is not anything more than that. And we want to make sure that the employees are compensated fairly for the work that they do. So these are not traditional things, some of them that medical providers and medical directors have thought about throughout their career. And so when we talk about developing the skill set of becoming a medical director, there is a shift in how we look at things, at the things that we start to contemplate how to improve. The good news is, having gone through medical education, having been a physician, or in some cases a psychiatric nurse practitioner, we are able to bring those skills and use them in a different way. So a CCBHC medical director is one of the 2 required management roles that are listed in the CCBHC documents. The only two management roles that are required are a CEO or an equivalent, meaning a director, and a psychiatrist as a medical director. Now, we know that CCBHCs have many more individuals who are part of a management role, but the CCBHC only makes reference to those two particular positions. In fact, it even says that a psychiatrist can fulfill both roles. Most organizations do not do that. There's also a caveat that if you are in an area where there's limited providers, psychiatrist availability, if there is an appropriately credentialed individual who can do many of the functions of a medical director, they can serve in that role, but you must still have a psychiatrist as a consultant to help to develop and maintain the integrity of your CCBHC. So CCBHC really kind of made a shift in recognizing the important things that a good medical director can bring to the system at large. Now, the medical director does not have to be full-time. Frequently they are not, but they can be. They also can work at a number of locations, and sometimes that level of synergy of having a medical director who's able to support more than one CCBHC can be very helpful. But the bottom line is CCBHCs have very much created an environment where we want to have medical directors who understand how to do some critical things. And one of the most critical things that they have to do is to promote care integration. That starts with the first of the three specific tasks that are in the CCBHC documents. They are to provide guidance regarding behavioral health clinical service delivery. I interpret that to mean we have to be in partnership with each other. We have to work as a team. That is what we are intended to do. We are, of course, what we have always been. We must ensure the quality of behavioral health medical services. And finally, it is our job as medical directors to guide and foster that integration within the community so that there is good coordination between behavioral health and primary care. Some CCBHCs bring some primary care within their own system, but many actually rely on fostering and building those relationships in their community, and that is an important job for a medical director. At the end of the day, medical directors are responsible for leading this multidisciplinary specialty group practice. And I will be saying group practice more than once during this, because we really need to get to a place where we have standardization in what we do and how we do it, and that our workflows between departments are aligned. And that our service delivery is utilizing level of care design, care pathways, so that we are able to address the specific needs of each individual as they are presenting today. We know that that will change over time, but it's important that we understand that is one of our key functions. So when I talk about a behavioral health group practice, what is the value proposition that we need to live up to? We need to make sure that we are providing fast access to all needed care. We need to make sure that that care that we are providing is high quality and that it is at the lowest possible cost. So we need to think about all of the things that go into the expenses of running medical services and then all of the other care delivery. We need to be connected. We need to be connected internally. We need to be connected in the community. We need to learn how to share information in an efficient way. These electronic highways of information, that's the kind of thing we need to understand and to become familiar with. Again, that's something that may be out of the usual purview of someone who is stepping into a medical director role. The next one is pretty easy for medical providers. We've been taught since the time we entered any kind of training, whether it was through the nursing avenue, through medical school, or through our system of becoming a PA, we've learned that we have to demonstrate measurable improvement. We monitor things, we look at data. So that is something that we are comfortable with, and it's more a question of how do we do that in a much bigger way. And we are responsible for figuring out how to make sure that this organization is resilient, that we can engage in all of the new alternative payment models that are out there, and that we also are really nimble at being able to make changes within our system of care. whether it's with the evidence-based practices that we're going to use, with the processes that we're going to use. It is really all about us becoming much more resilient and nimble at what we do. The way to achieve this is truly through integrated care pathways. And again, this is kind of what medical people tend to do. We look at all the pieces and we try and figure out how to put it together. But creating integrated care pathways means taking all that information and making it standardized and codifying it. It means developing those collaborative relationships and looking at the picture in front of us, not only just vertically in what do clients need, what do staff need, what do I need to do, what is the organization goals, but also horizontally to understand how all of these pieces fit together, how we're going to make sure that the team is in communication with each other, how we are making sure clients have access to specialty services when they need it, that we are using evidence-based practices and establishing protocols and doing it with fidelity, and that we are learning how we do things, we are aligning how we do things across departments so that they work together. And what are we hoping to achieve? We're hoping to achieve, number one, a decrease in wait time to get care. If someone has an urgent need, they will be seen for their services to start within 24 hours. If someone has more of a routine need, they will be seen within 10 days. That is a lot faster than many of us have done in the past. So it is trying to get to a place where we can accomplish that. We want to make sure that there is overall improvement in the client's life experiences. Are they able to function better? Are their symptoms improved to the point where they are not something that they have to spend a lot of time dwelling on? Has there been a decrease in hospitalizations or the use of higher levels of care? And in community behavioral health, we need to look at their criminal justice involvement. We know that our clients, unfortunately, receive a lot of their care within the criminal justice environment, and we need to work to change that, and monitoring that is really important. So when we talk about how to become all of these things, we're really talking about transformational change. And being a transformational leader means that we are going to focus on what we're moving towards, and we're not going to focus on what it is that we've done in the past. We're going to take the best of that, the things that are still relevant and appropriate, and we are going to instead figure out how to use all of that moving forward. We know that's going to be disruptive. We know that's going to lead to the need for people to accept that we have to do this and engage in that process in order to be successful. We have to have an agreement on what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve, and this is how we're going to do it. And it starts with honest communication. It starts with saying what we're doing isn't working, and what we're going to do moving forward is to work together as a team to make it happen. And there's going to be pain points. We have to talk about that there will be pain points. And some departments will experience more of that than others, and we have to work together to support them as we are trying to work together to make these changes effective. So it means ultimately that we are committed to creating a system of excellence that takes into account the unique benefits and perspectives that everyone brings to the table. It also means that we're going to look at data. We're not going to we're going to acknowledge people's feelings, but we're not going to have feelings drive the decisions. It's putting on that scientific brain that we have that as medical providers gets honed while we're preparing to go into our specific fields, and use it in a different way to say, okay, but let's look at what the facts tell us. You're saying that you want to do it this way, but we're still waiting. People are still waiting 30 days before they can be seen. That's not the solution. Let's figure out what we need to do differently. So some of the challenges that come with this, they're probably readily available and in your mind right now. One of the big ones is as we start to look at data, that performance monitoring can be very, very helpful, but it can be scary, especially if it's not used in the way it is intended. Data is there to help us make decisions. It is not there to make someone feel bad about what they do. It's not there to chastise people. It's there to help us get a benchmark of where we are, where we want to go, and to brainstorm about how do we achieve that. When you're doing transformational change, that doesn't mean you're doing one thing and then another and then another. What you're actually doing is you're doing multiple systemic changes over time. I just came from talking to a team that has had just been implemented just in time, which went very well. They are changing their template for their EHR right now for evaluation and management, and they're getting ready to institute collaborative documentation. On top of that, there's other changes coming with their EHR. They are feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But I'm happy to report that at this point, they're saying, but we've got the just in time, and that really has helped. Clients are happier. It's helped us with our day-to-day workflow. So it's making sure that we are looking at the impact of making all these changes, realizing that this parallel development is kind of creating a synergy, makes it easier to keep the momentum going on all the changes that have to happen. And it's really important that we acknowledge that there can be at some point some change fatigue, and we have to bolster ourselves and bolster each other up. As you are going through this process, expectations and processes are going to change more than once, because it's unlikely you will hit everything out of the park, the ball out of the park every time. So changes will keep coming until you achieve the outcomes that you want. So it's about just knowing that's a bit of a roller coaster. It's important to recognize how this will change everybody's work routine, some to a greater extent and some to a lesser extent. But recognizing that that in the moment is a pain point, but as it becomes second nature, it becomes easier and easier, and as the improvements are noticed, it makes it, this is what we should have been doing all along. And at the end of the day, change is hard. Change is hard, and there's always going to be some level of resistance in each of us at some point. And we want to make sure that we actually acknowledge that and talk it through so that we can figure out exactly how we're going to achieve the outcomes we're looking for. So at the end of the day, we're really talking about some redesigning and rethinking of roles within your organization. Medical directors in a CCBHC are expected to become a true transformational leader. That doesn't mean we give up our traditional roles, especially for medical directors who are full-time in an organization, often continue to provide direct care, less, but they do provide it. The recommendation really out of the National Council is no more than 50% of a full-time provider's time should be spent doing direct care. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do the other elements of their job. We also will continue to supervise medical providers, but you may take on a bigger role in supervising other folks within the organization. As you become more of a member of the senior leadership team, you are going to be challenged to look at the bigger picture. And you may be excited about that. I know some people have just been tapped and said, hey, we need you to do it, and then they've stepped up, but it wasn't necessarily their choice. I found it exciting when I made the decision to start to move towards a more senior leadership role in organizations. It's a challenge and an exciting time to build new collaborative partnerships, to really have a significant role in how the system is going to be designed, and making sure that it is a workflow and a process that is going to lead to our outcomes, which is clients improving. Figuring out how to implement evidence-based practices and process change. I like the puzzle of it. So I think, again, those of us who have gone through medical training of different sorts are problem solvers. We want to make a difference. And I just found this is a way that I could do that. And I encourage anyone who's thinking about it or has already stepped into it, thinking about how to do it better and how to do it in a way that energizes you as well. And as I've already mentioned, it's a role that encompasses community engagement. It's making sure that you are aware that you are the person who can have the conversations with the medical environment. So FQHCs, the public health departments, all of those kinds of places where we speak the language, we have the lingo down, we understand what they do, we can be able to communicate what it is that we do in a medical way that can be very, very helpful to creating and building those partnerships. I throw the criminal justice system in there in part because it's one of my pet projects, and that I think that's a place we really need to focus our energy. But it is a reality. We need to figure out how to work so that with the criminal justice system, so our clients stay in the community, get services in that environment rather than get on that revolving door. So learning how to communicate and talk to individuals in the criminal justice system is a different kind of way of engaging. So it's I encourage you to think about how that can happen within your communities. On the flip side, there's changes within the organization. This is some realignment and redesign, and the strategic redesign that takes place is going to be different than what it has been in the past. You know, first of all, the senior leadership team may be going through a redesign. I've been involved with teams where the medical director was a member of the senior leadership team, but if they showed up to a meeting, half of a meeting once every few months, that was kind of all that they could do, in part because they were doing a lot of direct care, or that was the only expectation that they have. This is about creating new work teams and creating a different level of cooperation and working together. It's truly the best way of addressing the siloed systems that exist within our organizations, and leads to that true integration of client experience, because we become aligned, because we are working as a multidisciplinary team. Again, group practice, you're going to hear me say it again, it's about that parallel development of change and growth, and that is how we can improve efficiencies the best way throughout the system. If we are doing things similarly in the clinical space and case management space and the medical provider space, that helps the front desk and the schedulers and all the other folks who are supporting us in achieving our goals in providing that direct care to have an aligned process themselves, so that what they're doing is not different because Dr. Westhead likes it a certain way, or this is how the case managers who work on the ACT team want to do it. We're creating that standardization that makes it work much easier for everybody. And it is creating a stratified service delivery system. It's recognizing that everyone should be working at their highest level of care and ability so that the client's needs are met. I know this means that there is more cost to be borne by the organization. The medical director is no longer spending 90% of their time doing direct care. They are spending no more than 50% of their time. So you have to be thinking about how that will be taken care of. I'm going to tell you that it's easily taken care of because you're going to have efficiencies that you're putting into your system, that you are working smarter and not harder. But it's something that has to be taken into account, and how that's going to be also incorporated into your PPS rates when you get to that point, if you aren't there already. So becoming a transformational leader is usually going through a few steps. You know, medical directors have generally already had the experience of doing some supervising. Medical training, whether it's, again, through the nursing, through PA, through medical school, we've had that experience where we had to supervise younger, less experienced individuals than us. As a supervisor, we're a problem solver. We are reacting to what's going on. We are thinking about where things have been, and we're basically focusing on what is it that the organization needs, what is it that is needed to solve this problem, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to tend to really just be focused on my own little tribe, which is the department I work in. I am less concerned about what's going on in the wider world. I'm really focusing on taking care of the needs of the staff who are directly reporting to me. A manager, when you become a manager, and some of this is attitude and not just what it is that you are assigned or your title, it has to do with maybe being a little bit more proactive, being able to think a little bit into the future and consider, we may have some problems here that we have to be working on. I need to be upping my game a little bit and start to make some decisions sooner rather than later, so that I am prepared and I can maybe even head off a crisis before it even happens. Managers tend to work on projects. They are much better at managing complexity, and they are good at recognizing the different skill sets and approaches that are needed to be successful, whether it's their own or someone else's. They are starting to become committed to the group, to the larger group, not just their own little department. And I shouldn't say little, but their own department. Becoming a transformational leader is that final leap of becoming a true coach and mentor. Not only are you able to solve problems and proactively look at solutions before problems arise, but you're also able to envision what is possible in order to implement and sustain changes. You will be ahead of the curve, not preparing for the curve. As a result, you are promoting resilience and survival in the marketplace that is always changing. This is the individual who, yes, is aware of what the overall goals and what the vertical needs are within the organization, but is infinitely more focused on how does everything work together. And how does all of that have to be responsive to what's going on in the internal system and what's going on in the external system. So as you work at becoming a medical director, or as you are helping someone to step into that role, you want to help them move through these processes. These are the things that one needs to do in order to get to the place of being the medical director that's needed in the years ahead. Some of the things that transformational leaders do is, number one, they commit to excellence. And what I mean by that is, I'm taking on the job, I'm accepting the responsibility and the authority that I need to lead. I am willing to take some of the risks, calculated risks, but I'm willing to make decisions when they need to be made, and I'm going to make them to achieve the goals of the organization. That's going to be a pretty heavy lift sometimes, but that is what you're agreeing to if you want to become a transformational leader. If you want to be an effective medical director, that's what it will take. You want to make sure that your behaviors are aligned with the goals, the values, the missions of the organization. It's going to be obvious to everyone if they are or they are not. How do you talk to people? How do you make decisions? How do you engage with people? Your behavior is going to communicate many things about how you are going to function and how people will work with you. It usually comes down to building a culture around service. And again, that's probably the easiest of the lifts because that's what we do. That is what we went into medical care for. That is what CCBHCs are all about. And there has to be an understanding or a belief that we can do this, that we can overcome barriers, we can solve problems, we can create a system that will lead to all of the things that we want to achieve. So it's that we can do this attitude that has to infuse your communication. And it's critical that we communicate why are we doing these things. We have to do it clearly, we have to do it succinctly, and we have to do it with precision. And I mean a consistent message across the board. And I've already mentioned what they are. We want client outcomes. We want clients to do better because of what we're doing for them. We want staff to be satisfied, not always, but to be satisfied with their job and want to continue to work with us. And we want to get to the point where we are confident that we can maintain ourselves financially so we can move forward well into the future. We also are very clear that we're going to gather data about things that really matter. We're going to look at delivery outcomes that show that clients are doing better, that there are fewer admissions to the hospital, that there are improvements on the PHQ-9 scores and the CSSRSs and all those kinds of things. Again, medical directors ask these questions. Medical directors think about these things. We also are comfortable talking about productivity and not looking at it as something that we have to whisper. Because productivity, the word, has become something that people shy away from. And really, productivity is all about, have we created a system that allows our staff to be able to accomplish their job? So it's really about looking at the system that is supporting the service delivery so that it can happen. That's not to say that there aren't the occasional staff who they aren't able to do the job for whatever reason, and so this might not be the right place for them. But more often than not, it is a lot to do with the system support being able to do your job well. And obviously, we're going to measure financial performance and all the elements that go into it, not just are we billing for services, are we getting payment for services, but are we following up on all of that? And are we being supported in making sure that that happens? And again, medical directors historically, prior to becoming a medical director, didn't necessarily think that much about the financial impacts of what we do and the financials of the organization. A medical director has to shift their focus and start to think about that. Obviously, we have to focus on our staff development. We want to pull them into the future. We don't want to have to be pushing them up the hill. We want to let them see that we are willing and able to make timely, tough decisions, taking into account the things that they have brought to the table. And then if we made an error, that we are more than willing to correct that error, make a course correction, and move in the right direction. We are willing to take the feedback. That is how we pull staff forward, because they can see that our vision is about making the system better for the clients and for them. That doesn't mean that we don't build individual accountability, our own, but more specifically, all of our staff. And the best way to do that is to truly recognize and reward success, to really acknowledge the top performers, and to do that privately and publicly. To then make sure that we are focusing on how do we help those who are in the middle, who are struggling a little bit, but want to make that difference, get to that level. And have our top performers maybe even be the mentors and helpers for that. The reason being, we're hoping to identify and develop our future leaders, whoever they might be. So it is about realizing that staff development is a critical job for a medical director as you step into that role and continue to refine as a medical director. I think above and beyond anything about the attitude that we take into being a medical director, it is we have to be solution focused. And I just take the definition of solution focused out of solution focused therapy. We are directing patients towards their preferred future and strengths rather than thinking about the past and failings. That is the way we should approach our job as a medical director and as a leader. Let's think about what is it the future of the organization, the future of the department, the future of the service delivery system that we want. What are the strengths that we have to achieve it, and what do we need to add to it to make that happen? It means we start with a fresh slate. We are willing to say, let's leave the past outside and let's start thinking about what the change needs to be. As long as we are working on addressing clients' needs, we are creating and engaging our workforce and they are satisfied, and we're maintaining our organization, then we should be moving forward with any change that will achieve preferably all three of those goals. Actually, if you take care of the first two, the third usually will take care of itself. It's having the attitude of it's a new day, it's a new way, we are working as a team. We know that good ideas can come from anywhere or anyone, so don't ever hesitate to check in with everyone on your team and those outside of your team. Off-the-wall ideas might give somebody a great idea that can be taken to the next level. And one of the things that I've always done as a leader, and particularly in my medical team, is to let them know, I want to hear the problems that you have identified, but I need you to give me 3 ideas to address it. I don't care how reasonable they seem to you, but I want to hear your, because if you've identified it as a problem, I'm pretty sure you have some ideas of how it should be fixed. I may not agree with your ideas, but I'd like to hear them, because I want other people to be a part of this solutions. I want them to take the ownership of moving forward. I also want them to feel proud of the fact that they were able to help move the organization in a new direction if that's what's needed. As a transformational leader, it's really important that we help everyone within our purview to grow. This is probably one of the things that medical providers have learned how to do pretty well. From the very beginning of our training, we've been thrown into situations where there were crises. So we've gotten pretty good at identifying and de-escalating those. Our experience and our sound judgment is what we bring to the table. Hopefully we also bring a little humor and a little humility to this, but we have learned how to identify and resolve crises. We also have learned how to empower and use system learning. We have all been involved in case conferences, in peer review processes, in being grilled by an attending when we were a resident or a student. It is about being comfortable with, in a non-judgmental environment, sharing data and talking about how we can improve things moving forward. And then making sure that we have shared lessons learned within the team and beyond. We want to make sure that we talk about what was the problem that we had to address, what were the solutions that we utilized, did we get the outcomes we wanted, and to what extent did we get them, and what would we change looking back, so that the next time something similar happens, we can address it. So this is what transformational leaders really do to build resilience within departments, within individuals, within the organization, and to help it to grow. And I think the nice thing is that's one of the things as medical professionals we bring to the table. Another thing that we have to become if we're going to be a successful transformational leader is to become what I call boundary spanners, which means I know my technical expertise. I know what I know. I know how to monitor trends. I know how to think about sustainable solutions to problems that arise. So I understand my area of expertise. I understand where that ends and where I need to rely on somebody else. And I have the emotional intelligence to recognize that. I have the ability to interact with other people and be able to build those bridges so that we can have across the board improvement. So I need to make sure that I have enough self-awareness and self-correction so that I can stop myself if I'm going down the wrong path. I have empathy. I understand how things are affecting other people who work for me, other systems that the CCBHC is engaging with, and I am able to create an environment where we can talk about things, where there can be mutual support, that we have listening and communicating, and we have input going back and forth. And finally, I have the ability to provide effective feedback and to motivate folks. I can have the tough conversations, and I can identify those who I should be encouraging to continue to grow and move in new directions because they have potential to bring other good things to the world. So that's about me. And I also have to have a reasonable amount of curiosity and humility about how I approach my work and my engagement with others. In order to be a transformational leader, you have to be a lifelong learner. Again, something that is instilled in us from the very beginning as medical providers. We have to keep a broad vision of what's happening within the world we work in and the world around us. I have to have a curiosity and interest in what other people do. I want to understand their roles, their approaches, and I want to think about how they might solve a problem. And I learn how to ask the right questions in the right way. I ask with curiosity. I ask with genuine interest in how they accomplish something, how they thought that might have helped. Is there something that I could have done to help them or that they would suggest I do in the future when something like this comes up? Communicating the positive intent of asking these questions, of really being all about that supportive learning community is very important for a transformational leader. And probably at the end of the day, one of the most important things we have to do is address resistance to change. Again, it can be very difficult, but as medical providers, we have learned how to work with clients and help them overcome their barriers. And it's taking some of those skill sets and doing it again in a different way. You know, the things that are on this slide are probably things that are familiar with how you have had to work with patients, with some of the people you supervise. But I think it's important to put them out in the open. You know, there's lots of times where people are going to say, yeah, sure, I agree with you. Let's go ahead and do this. But they're saying no behind your back. Or they're focused on the exceptions because they don't really want to change. And if they throw up enough of those, maybe we won't have to move forward with it. Or they're really committed to the past. They're really committed to what is it that we've done previously because I want to keep on doing it that way. I think one of the most insidious ones is the drift that happens as you are building and making changes. Staff, out of a desire to not be constantly bombarded with complaints, will start to make exceptions and start to revert to the way things used to be. And the next thing you know, it's completely unraveled. So those are the things we need to watch out for, that we need to encourage our staff past. And the one that's probably the most difficult, but in some ways the easiest to deal with, is the outright refusal to do something. Hey, I think it's a great idea, but I'm never going to do it. It's helping them to understand that at our organization, you work for a group practice, and this is how we're going to do things moving forward. I hope you can find a way to work with us on that, with the unspoken message of it's not going to be something that you can just say no to. We find ways to de-silo systems. We talk to each other. We understand what case management and care coordination is all about. Clinical services. We have a role in this under the CCBHC, guiding and engaging in what are the clinical services and how do medical services and clinical services and case management work together. Care coordination is often really about connecting to primary care. So that is something that the medical director has a big role in, making sure that we're working together. And recognizing that all 4 disciplines, including operations, have to work together. And I always put them in alphabetical order because I don't think anyone is more important than the other. We need to make sure that we provide good internal customer service to each other as we're working together. So a transformational medical director is going to build this group practice. They're going to look at creating vertical integration with stratified provision of care, meaning we have therapists with case managers who support them, maybe doing some groups and those kinds of things, and peer supports who provide other additional mentoring. So therapists can focus on the evidence-based therapy modalities that they're using. Same in medical services, physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses, LPNs, MAs. We all have a role to play. We all have a funding source that can help bring revenue into the organization to pay for the services that we're delivering. A medical director needs to understand that, understand those differences, understand the way a care pathway should be set up with regards to how frequently you see the physician versus a nurse practitioner or PA. Or seeing a nurse. You have to understand that. We work on one treatment plan. We realize that we are all working collaboratively because the client has one set of goals. They don't just have a goal that I have in medical, a therapist has, a case manager has, whatever. We have one treatment plan where everybody's working to achieve the same things. We want to make sure that, again, we are collaborating with each other, we value the strengths of the team, and we work together to make things happen. So one of the questions I'm throwing out to all of you is, what kind of leader do you see yourself as being? The Blake Mouton grid is just one way of looking at how to be a leader. It basically has how concerned are you about the people that you work for or work with you, and how concerned are you about the results? If you are mostly concerned about the people who work for you, you might fall into the school of country club management, meaning that you want to make sure that your staff are happy, and that is what you are focused on. That is not an uncommon path that some people in community behavioral health take for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's hard work, and we want to make sure that our staff are well taken care of. Number two, we are in a workforce shortage. We are trying to figure out how the heck are we going to keep our doors open with having enough people who can provide these services. So we're afraid to actually hold people accountable, to help them to realize that they do have a responsibility to their clients, they have a responsibility to the organization as a whole. So we want to be thinking about how much do we care about their well-being while at the same time making sure we are caring about the results that we are providing care. Because at the other extreme, we have individuals who, I'm all about the bottom line. This is where productivity can become a dirty word, something that people start to feel like all that you care about is, am I making money for the organization? That's not why I came on board. So it is not about the produce or perish management style where we are only thinking about the data. It's important that we find a way to bring those pieces together. You want to be obviously in that upper right-hand quadrant that's labeled team management. Team management is where we are really focused on the true outcomes that we are delivering for the individuals that we serve, that we are absolutely worrying about the needs of our employees and wanting to make sure that they are productive and happy in the work that they do. That we are giving them opportunities to grow and develop. When you think about what staff are interested, it's about they want to see a future for themselves. They have entered our field, they've entered into community behavioral health because they have a passion to make a difference. They have a passion in trying to help people live better lives. And they also want to see that as they hone their skills, that there's an opportunity for them to move forward, that there's an opportunity for them to become maybe sometimes a manager, sometimes involved in training, sometimes involved in other things that they have a passion for. Far too often, all that we have for people to grow in our organization is to just keep on seeing more clients, more patients. We want to find other ways to support them in taking on new roles. As a medical director, we clearly have that role within the medical department with trying to understand how best to manage the team of medical providers, nursing supports, perhaps the case management that is integrated into our medical clinics, and understanding how that team should work together and how we should be helping them to grow and become a resilient management team. We start there. That's what we've generally worked on in the past. We want to take that experience and now take it to a much bigger level and make sure that we are concerned about the satisfaction and the productivity of staff in other divisions, particularly in clinical and case management, because all of those teams need to work together: medical, clinical, and case management. So I've mentioned it before, but the real issues is that we have to be mission committed to creating the best, highest quality, most efficient services that we can, that we are truly focused on employee empowerment in doing the job that they signed on to do, and that we are helping them to develop the skills to make that happen. It's very important that we are focused on treating staff with respect. Doesn't mean that we agree with them. That doesn't mean that we don't have hard conversations, but it always comes from a place of respect. And we engender trust. We find a way to let staff know that the decisions we make and what we are concerned about are the things that matter to them as well. So the Blake Mouton grid is something that, you know, I have found useful as I have myself worked through becoming a medical director, a chief medical officer, and ultimately someone who is excited about how to transform teams and how to help people develop those skills. You know, I started off, I'm happy to say I was in the team management quadrant the first time I used this as an evaluation tool. I haven't reached it's on a scale of 9. I don't think I'll ever get to the 9 and 9. It's more about I want to keep on moving and developing so that I can find a way to both myself and to help other folks find a way to bring together their ability to work and manage and support the people who work for them and make sure that the mission of the organization, the needs of clients, are met. So as you are thinking about becoming a medical director or are starting your journey as a medical director or have been doing it for a while, or as you are starting to think about what is it I need for a medical director, I'd like to suggest some things for y'all to read. Most of them are pretty simple reads. When I started this journey myself, you know, I guess I've been a medical director for more than 20 years, but, you know, 15 years or so, I started to move in making that a much bigger part of what I do. These were some of the things that I have found helpful. Patrick Lencioni is a great writer about leadership. His book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, is a very easy but insightful read to understand the different members of a senior leadership team. And it's a very helpful tool to think about, where do I fit into this? And most of the time, no one is a pure one type or another that's you know, described in the book. But it's a helpful way to understand yourself and then think about what other folks that you are working with might be struggling with and how you might be able to work with them better. Because these are not dysfunctions that you can't overcome. It's more about how do you achieve that. And that's why I was very interested in his new book, The 6 Types of Working Genius. This is a book about all of us bring some very unique skill sets. I highly recommend it as another book out of his series of books because it will, again, help you to better understand where your strengths are, where are the areas that you should be working to grow, and figure out how other team members may have fill in the gaps that you are lacking, and you might be doing the same for them. So I find both of those books to be very, very helpful to think through how do I become a better leader, and how do I become a better collaborative partner with the folks on my team. It's also very helpful in thinking about my team in general, folks who report to me. Straight A Leadership by Quinn Studer. Quinn Studer has been in leadership in the hospital setting, so he comes from a medical background, although he's not a medical person. I find his books to be a really good way to think about how to be a good leader, how to really focus on what's important. So I encourage you to think about anything that he's written. If you haven't read Emotional Intelligence, we all need more of that. David Lloyd, the founder and chief operating officer of MTM, has some great chapters in a book that's available from the National Council. And something that I did, again, 10 or 12 years ago is become a subscriber to the Harvard Business Review. There are always great articles in there that have helped me to think about things differently. And yes, it very rarely speaks specifically to healthcare and medical systems, but it helps me to think in a different way. I already bring that skill set and my task-oriented things that I know how to do as having been a physician for many, many years. But the Harvard Business Review articles help me to think about what I bring to the table and how I can take that and use it differently. Some of the things that are up there, you can certainly get them from a reprint. I really encourage you to look at the C-suite skills that matter most. And there is a free download from the Harvard Business Review, and I don't get paid for them. These are free. This is free. Is How to Become a More Effective Leader, and you can get that for free. So I think any resource that you can use to help you understand better how to be an effective leader is something to do. Again, those of us who have gone into medicine have done a lot of reading over the years. We always go to find a textbook, something online, et cetera, to help us better understand how to treat a client's conditions, how to understand what is behind an illness, et cetera. We want to bring that same strength to this new endeavor because we have some things that will help us do very well in this area, but it's also a matter of looking for other resources that we might not have tapped in previously. So at the end, I just thought I'd start with a little bit of a cartoon. You know, we all know that we need to make changes. Life is about change if it's about anything. Our job as medical providers and in community mental health centers is to encourage and assist people to make changes. But at the end of the day, we're all kind of hoping that things can be transformed, but we won't really have to do anything different. So a little tongue-in-cheek there. I am going to make this a little smaller so I can see if there are any questions, anything in the chat. Let me go ahead and do that. But please unmute yourself if you have a question. I'd be more than happy to answer. We have about a minute or two left. Well, thank you for listening, and I appreciate your engagement. Take care.